There's a sound I can't get out of my head, and it isn't screaming. It's a padlock closing. That small, final click of a shackle seating into the body of a lock, followed by the weight of a chain settling against a metal gate. I heard it every night for one season, and I still hear it now, in rooms where there is no gate and no chain and no reason for the sound to exist. I was a park ranger for exactly one season, late spring to the first hard frost. I want to be honest with you before I tell you anything else, because honesty is the only thing I have left that's worth anything. I followed almost every rule they gave me, almost. And the one rule I broke wasn't even written down. They gave me a laminated card my first day. 7 rules for the overnight posting at Ashcomb Station. Most of them were strange. All of them were specific, and there was one trail on my map, a short lettered spur called Trail 14, that we closed every single night, chained shut from dusk until sunrise. My supervisor told me not to ask why. I asked anyway. I'm going to tell you what happened, start to finish, the way it actually went, without dressing it up. Not because I think it will help me. It won't. I'm telling you because somewhere out there, someone is about to take a job like mine, and they're going to be handed a card, and they're going to laugh at it the way I did. Don't laugh. Count the names. Lock the gate before the light turns. And whatever you do, when your supervisor tells you not to ask why a trail is closed at night, believe that he is trying to save your life. I didn't. So let me start at the beginning, back when I still thought the worst thing I carried was already behind me. Before I was a ranger, I was a voice on a phone. 11 years working overnight for an emergency line. You've probably never thought about the people who answer those calls, and that's fine. That's how it's supposed to work. We're not meant to be remembered. We're meant to keep you calm until someone with hands and a vehicle can reach you. I was good at it. Steady voice, slow breathing, the kind of tone that makes a panicking person believe the world is still ordered. I talked people through the worst nights of their lives, and then I clocked out and drove home in the gray dawn and slept while the rest of the world worked. But there was one call I never clocked out from. A woman lost off a trail, phone battery dying, no clear landmarks. Cold in her voice, the kind of cold that's already stopped shivering. I stayed with her. I did everything right, or I thought I did. I gave her directions based on what she described. Follow the water downhill. Keep the ridge on your left. I was wrong about the ridge. She went the way I told her, and the way I told her was the wrong way. And by the time the search teams understood the mistake, there was nothing left to find. Not that season, not the next one. I never learned if she died fast or slow. I've imagined both 1,000 times. That's the thing nobody tells you about being a voice. You never get to show up. You never get to physically stand in the place and change it. You just talk and hope, and then live with the silence when the line goes dead. I left that job because I couldn't sit in a chair anymore. I wanted work where I could show up in person, where if someone was lost in the dark and calling for help, I could put on boots and walk to them and be the one who arrived. That's the truth about why I became a ranger. Not for the scenery, for redemption. I wanted to answer a call and reach it this time. The universe has a sense of humor about that kind of wish. Because the job I found, the remote one nobody else wanted, was built entirely around a single rule: do not answer. The posting listing was almost apologetic about how remote it was. Single Ranger overnight coverage. Ashcomb Station, a spur district off the main Appalachian corridor in the southern mountains. No cell coverage. Radio check-ins mandatory. Applicant must be comfortable with extended isolation. Most people read a listing like that and keep scrolling. I read it and felt something loosen in my chest, because isolation sounded like exactly what I deserved. A quiet posting where I could work with my hands and my legs and stop replaying a phone call from years ago. I applied the same night. They called me back faster than any job I'd ever applied for, which should have been a flag, but I was too relieved to notice. The drive-in took most of the day. The last 2 hours were gravel and switchbacks, the kind of road where you slow to a crawl and still feel your tires drift toward the drop. My phone lost signal early and never found it again. The hemlocks grew taller and closer the higher I climbed, until the canopy laced together overhead, and the road ran through a green tunnel that swallowed the afternoon light. I remember rolling my window down. The air changed, cooler, wetter, heavy with the smell of pine sap and damp stone, and something older underneath it. The mineral smell of a place that has never really been warm. The station appeared without warning around a bend. A low building of dark timber and a metal roof gone dull with weather. A generator shed, a water tank, a small equipment lot. And behind it, the mountains folded away in ridges that went blue and then bluer until they dissolved into haze. It was beautiful. I want to be clear about that, because everything that came later doesn't erase how beautiful it was. That's the trap of a place like Ashcomb. It looks like peace. It looks like the reward at the end of a hard drive. I got out and stood in the gravel and listened to the silence. No traffic, no planes, just wind moving through hemlock and the far-off sound of water. I thought I'd found somewhere to heal. I'd found somewhere that needed a new ranger. And there's a difference, though it took me weeks to understand what that difference cost. Dale was already there when I arrived, sitting on the station steps like he'd been waiting a while, and didn't mind. He was older, maybe late 50s, built like a man who'd spent his whole life walking uphill. Gray at the temples, sun lines around his eyes, hands that had clearly done real work. He stood and shook my hand, and his grip was warm and unhurried, and I liked him immediately. That's important for you to understand. Dale was not a villain in a story. He was kind. He was tired. He looked at me the way a man looks at a stranger he already feels sorry for. "You made good time," he said. "Most people take longer on that last stretch. The road's something. It keeps the casual folks out." He smiled a little. Which is the point. He walked me through the station the way you'd expect. The radio setup, mounted on the wall, with a laminated schedule of check-in times. The water system, and the trick of priming the pump. The generator, the fuel, the breaker panel. Where the first aid gear lived. Where the permit binder lived. All of it normal, all of it professional, delivered in the flat, competent tone of a man who trained a dozen people before me. I started to relax. This was just a job. A remote one, an odd one, but a job. Then we got to the map. It covered most of one wall, the whole district laid out in contour lines and trail markings. Dale walked me through the main routes, the water crossings, the shelters, the boundary lines. His finger moved easily over the paper. Then it stopped. There was a short, lettered spur near the eastern edge, branching off the main trail and curling up into a steep drainage before it ended at nothing in particular. It was marked Trail 14. Dale tapped it. Once. "This one," he said. "We close every night. Gates chained by dusk. Opened at sunrise. You'll handle that." "Any reason?" I asked. Normal question. Reasonable question. He didn't take his eyes off the map. "Don't ask why." He said it lightly, almost friendly, but he said it, and something in the room shifted, and I felt the comfort I'd been building drain out of the floor. Dale reached into his jacket and pulled out a laminated card, the kind that's been printed, sealed in plastic, and handled by a lot of hands over a lot of years. The edges were soft with wear. The corners were rounded. He held it out to me. "Operating rules for the overnight posting," he said. "Read it twice before dark. Then read it again after your first week, because it'll mean more." I took it. It was warm from his pocket. On one side was the district header and a list of 7 numbered rules in plain, official font. Nothing dramatic, nothing handwritten in blood. Just a document, the way a fire evacuation plan is a document. I skimmed it, expecting the usual. Lock the gates. Log your patrols. Don't leave the station unmanned. Report hazards. That's not what it said. It said things like, close the trail, 14 gate, by the time the valley light turns orange, not by the clock. It said, if you hear your own name from inside trail 14, log the time, and do not answer. It said never let the register leave the gatepost box, and count the signatures every night. And if the count goes down, do not investigate. I read it twice, standing right there, because it was so strange, I thought I'd misunderstood. I hadn't. I laughed. Just a short, surprised breath of a laugh, the way you laugh when someone tells a joke you don't fully get. "This is a real card?" I said. "Or is this a thing you give the new guy?" Dale didn't laugh with me. He wasn't offended. He just looked at me with that same tired patience, like a man who has watched several people laugh at that exact card and has stopped expecting anything else. "Read it twice," he said again, "and keep it on you, every night." Then he picked up his pack, told me my first radio check-in was at 8, and walked out to his truck. I watched his taillights disappear down the green tunnel of the road. And then I was alone with a beautiful mountain, a quiet station, and a laminated card that made no sense at all. That first evening, I sat at the small desk with a cup of instant coffee going cold beside me, and I read the card slowly, the way Dale told me to, twice, then a third time, because the second reading didn't help. I'll give them to you the way they were written, because you deserve to hear them the way I first heard them. 1. Chain and padlock, the trail, 14 gate, by the time the valley light turns orange, not by the clock. If you are late, do not fix it. Radio in and stay inside until sunrise. 2. If you hear your own name from inside trail 14, log the time Do not answer. Do not confirm you heard it. And do not use your radio until it stops. 3. Never let the Trail 14 register leave the gate post box. Count the signatures every night. If the count goes down, do not investigate. Note it and continue. 4. One hiker may approach the gate after dark, asking to be let through because they left something on the trail. They are always polite. Do not open the gate for any reason. Real people do not come back at night. 5. Every 7th night, leave the small gate lantern lit and facing the trail. Do not look directly at what it illuminates. Turn it off at first light. 6. If a second ranger arrives to relieve you before your shift ends, do not let them in, and do not leave with them. Confirm relief only by scheduled radio, never in person. 7. Do not ask your supervisor why Trail 14 is closed. He will answer. That was it. 7 rules. I sat there with the last one under my thumb and read it again. He will answer. Not he won't tell you. Not it's classified. He will answer, stated like a warning, like the answering was the danger. I told myself what any reasonable person would tell themselves. This was folklore. Every old district has its ghost stories, its hazing rituals, its traditions that calcified into policy because nobody ever bothered to remove them. Some ranger, decades ago, had a strange night and wrote a strange list, and it got laminated. And now it got handed to nervous new hires as a kind of test. That's what I told myself. But safety rules tell you what to do so you don't get hurt. These rules told me what not to do so I wouldn't be noticed. There's a difference, and even that first night, some part of me felt it. I couldn't sit still with it, so before the light went, I walked out to see the thing for myself. The Trail 14 gate was maybe a 15-minute walk from the station, down the main path, and then out along the spur. Gravel gave way to packed dirt under my boots. The hemlocks pressed close. The creek ran somewhere off to my right, loud, then quiet, then loud again as the trail curved. The gate wasn't much. A galvanized farm gate, the kind you see on cattle land, hung between 2 heavy wooden posts sunk in concrete. A chain looped through it, and an old padlock hung open on the chain, waiting. Beyond it, the trail climbed into the drainage, and the trees closed over it fast, so you couldn't see more than 40 feet before the path bent and vanished into green shadow. On the left post was a metal box, weathered and dented, the kind that holds a trail register. I opened it. Inside was a spiral notebook, swollen with damp, its pages wavy and soft, the ink on some of them bleeding into gray clouds. A trail register. Hikers sign in, sign out. Standard. Except the card said to count the signatures every night, and to worry only if the number went down. Signatures don't go down. That's the whole point of a register. Names get added. Ink dries. Nobody unsigns a book. I flipped to the last written page and counted anyway, because the itch of it wouldn't leave me. Some names were recent. Some were faded to nothing. I counted every legible entry twice to be sure. 41. I stood there in a failing light with a soft, wet notebook in my hands and 41 strangers' names under my thumb. And I did something I still don't fully understand. I took out my pen and wrote the number on my own palm. 41. A small precaution against a rule I didn't even believe. The light was still white gold through the trees. Not orange. Not yet. I put the register back, closed the box, and started walking. And I told myself the count would be 41 tomorrow, and 41 the night after, and that Dale's card was a mountain man's superstition, dressed up in official font. I made it back to the station just as the tops of the ridges caught fire. The first few nights, nothing happened, and I want you to sit in that with me, because the nothing is part of how it works. My days settled into a rhythm that was, honestly, everything I'd hoped for. I'd patrol the main trail in the morning light, boots on wet gravel, the smell of pine and cold water in my nose. I'd meet through hikers coming through, sunburned and cheerful, and smelling like 3 weeks of hard walking. I'd check permits, top off the register boxes, radio in on schedule, log everything in neat handwriting. The mountain in daylight was one of the most beautiful places I've ever stood. Warblers moving through the canopy, the creek running clear over stones you could count, fog burning off the drainages in the early morning, so the whole valley looked like it was breathing. I talked to people, real, ordinary people, a retired couple doing a section hike, a pair of college kids who'd underpacked and overestimated themselves, a solo woman with good gear and a quiet confidence who reminded me, for one uncomfortable second, of a voice I used to know, and then hiked on and became just another cheerful stranger. Every evening before dusk, I walked out to Trail 14, and I chained the gate, and I counted the register. 41, 41, 41. I started to feel foolish about the number on my palm. I'd washed it off after the second day. The rules began to feel like what I'd first assumed, a quaint bit of local color, and I caught myself half fond of them, the way you get fond of an old building's creaks. The gate was just a gate. The trail was just a trail that happened to be closed at night for some forgotten liability reason. Dale was just a careful old ranger who took his traditions seriously. That's what a lull is for. Not for you, for it. The quiet isn't the absence of the thing. The quiet is the thing, letting you get comfortable, letting you loosen, letting you decide you understand the place before the place decides to show you that you don't. By the fourth evening, I was so relaxed, I was careless. And careless, on Trail 14, has a very specific cost. The fourth evening, I got distracted. And distraction is such a small, human, forgivable thing that I still can't believe what it nearly cost me. A late hiker had come through wanting a backcountry permit for the main corridor, and I stood at the station, logging his details, while the afternoon slid by faster than I tracked. Nice guy. Talkative. By the time he'd shouldered his pack and headed off toward the shelters, the light through the station windows had gone from white to gold to something warmer, and I felt a small, cold drop in my stomach when I looked up and understood how late it had gotten. Rule 1. Chain the gate by the time the valley light turns orange, not by the clock. I grabbed the lock key and went out the door at a jog. The walk to Trail 14 that takes 15 minutes at a stroll, I did in less than 10, boots skidding on the gravel, the creaks loud in my ears, my breath coming hard. And the whole way, the light kept changing. It deepened, the gold thickened toward amber, and the amber leaned toward orange, and I could actually watch it happen through the trunks of the hemlocks, like a dial being turned by a hand I couldn't see. I reached the gate with my chest tight and my mouth dry. The light was orange. Not almost. Not nearly. Full, deep, burning orange, the kind of color that doesn't belong to any sunset I'd seen before, saturating the trees and the trail and the metal of the gate, so everything looked dipped in it. I was late. Not by much. By minutes. By 3 minutes, maybe. And Rule 1 didn't say, hurry up and fix it. Rule 1 said, if you are late, do not fix it. Radio in and stay inside until sunrise. I stood there with the padlock key in my shaking hand and the open chain hanging from the gate. And I had to decide, right then, whether the card on my hip was folklore or instruction. The trail beyond the gate had gone dark early, the way the inside of a throat is dark. And from somewhere up in that darkness, past the first bend, I heard gravel shift, the specific sound of weight settling onto a path. Something on Trail 14 was waiting to see what I would do. I made the wrong choice. I locked the gate. I know Rule 1 said not to fix it if I was late. But standing there, 3 minutes over, with an open gate and a lifetime of professional habit, screaming that an unlocked gate was a failure, my hands moved before my judgment could stop them. I lifted the chain to draw it tight through the bars. The chain was cold, not cool, not the ordinary chill of metal in mountain evening air. It was cold the way a freezer handle is cold, cold enough that my fingers stuck for half a second before I pulled the links through, cold enough that it hurt, a deep ache that ran up into my wrist. The air around me was mild. The metal was not. There was no reason for it, no sun and shade explanation, nothing but a chain that was colder than the world it hung in. I threaded the padlock. My fingers were clumsy with the ache and the fear I wasn't admitting to yet. The shackle wouldn't seat. I pressed harder. It clicked home. That sound, the one I still hear. And in the silence, right after it, from the far side of the gate, up where the trail bent into black, something breathed. It wasn't wind. Wind doesn't have a pace. This did. A long, slow pull of air, deliberate, the sound of lungs that were in no hurry at all, followed by an equally slow release that I felt more than heard. A movement of cold air across the backs of my hands. Then a pause. Then again. Breathing. Patient and enormous. From the wrong side of a gate I had just chained shut. Every instinct I had wanted to look, to point my flashlight up the trail and prove to myself it was an animal, a bear, an elk, anything with a name. I didn't look. I don't know where the discipline came from. Maybe from 11 years of keeping my voice level while my whole body wanted to panic. I kept my eyes on the lock, on my own hands, on the ordinary gravel at my feet. I turned around slowly, the way you back away from something you don't want to startle. And I walked. The breathing followed me to the bend in the trail and no further, the way a dog follows you to the end of its chain. I did not run. Running felt like it would tell it something. I walked back to the station in the dark, with a padlock key in one hand, and no memory of putting my flashlight away. Inside, with the door bolted behind me, and the generator humming its steady mechanical comfort, I picked up the radio. My hands were still shaking. I told myself to breathe, to get my voice under control the way I'd done 1,000 times for other people. And I keyed the mic. Ashcomb to District. Dale, you there? Static. The particular hiss of a radio in the mountains, empty and vast. Then a click. Go ahead. Dale's voice, calm, close to sleep. I opened my mouth to be professional about it, and what came out wasn't professional at all. I was late to the gate, only a few minutes. I locked it anyway. Dale, there was something breathing on the other side, right there, slow, big. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't wind. It was breathing at me through the gate. The static stretched out. Long. Longer than a pause should be. I could hear him not answering, and the not answering was worse than anything he could have said. Then, finally, quietly, you locked it? Ah, yes, I locked it. Then that's what matters. A breath on his end. Don't be late again. Dale, what was that? What was breathing at me? You did the important part. You went inside. His voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. It had the flat, careful evenness of a man reading from a script he'd read many times. Radio check at your scheduled time. Get some sleep. Dale? Good night? A click. Gone. I sat there, holding a dead mic, and understood something I'd been refusing to understand since I first laughed at the card. Dale wasn't surprised. He hadn't asked what I meant. He hadn't offered a single rational explanation. Hadn't said it was a bear, or my nerves, or the wind through the drainage. He'd only wanted to confirm that I'd locked the gate and gone inside, because he already knew what breathed on the far side of Trail 14. He'd probably heard it himself. The rules weren't folklore. They were operational. Every strange line on that laminated card was a procedure written by someone who had learned, the hard way, exactly what happened when you didn't follow it. And there were still 6 more rules I hadn't seen come true. I lay awake that whole night listening to the generator. And somewhere under its hum, faint and far off, I thought I could still hear that slow, patient breathing, waiting for me to make another small human mistake. A week passed before I heard my name. I'd become careful by then, careful the way you're careful on ice. Gate locked well before the light turned. Register counted. Radio checks on time. 41, still 41. And I'd stopped finding that reassuring, because I'd started to understand that a number that never changes on a mountain that swallows people is not a comfort. It's a held breath. It was near midnight. I was at the desk, logging the day when I heard it, and it came from outside, from the direction of the spur, carried on air that had gone very still. My name, my full name, first and last, spoken clearly from somewhere out along Trail 14. I froze with my pen on the paper. The voice was close to mine. Not exactly, but close, the way a recording of yourself is close, familiar, and wrong at once. It had the cadence of someone who knew me, someone calling to get my attention, patient and reasonable. Rule 2. If you hear your own name from inside Trail 14, log the time. Do not answer. Do not confirm you heard it. And do not use your radio until it stops. My hand was shaking so badly, the pen scratched the paper. I wrote the time. 11:52. I did not answer. I did not move toward the door. I sat perfectly still, breathing through my mouth so it wouldn't hear me, and I gripped the edge of the desk to keep myself in the chair. It called again, softer this time, almost gentle. My name, then a pause, then something that wasn't words but was clearly a question, a rising note of need. The sound a lost person makes when they've called for help so many times they've stopped expecting an answer and started begging for one. I knew that sound. I had spent 11 years of my life on the other end of that exact sound. And that was when I understood, with a horror that went all the way down, that whatever was on Trail 14 had reached into the one part of me I could not defend, and it was learning how to use it. The voice changed. I want to describe this carefully because it's the center of everything. The moment the mountain stopped being a place with a strange rule and became a place that had read my life, it stopped sounding like me. It became her. The lost caller. The woman from years ago. The one whose voice I'd carried out of that dispatch chair and into every quiet room since. I hadn't heard her in years, except in memory. And memory softens things. But this didn't come from memory. It came from the dark, past the gate. In her voice, exactly. The cold in it. The way it thinned at the ends of words. "I'm still out here," it said. "It's so cold. I just need directions. You know the way. You always know the way. Just tell me which way to go." I was on my feet without deciding to stand. My chair had gone over behind me, and I didn't hear it hit the floor. Every cell in my body was pointed at the door. This was the call I'd become a ranger to answer. This was the whole reason I'd driven up that road, the reason I'd wanted a job where I could show up in person and reach the voice this time and not fail it. All I had to do was open the door, walk to the gate, and answer. Rule 2. Do not answer. Do not confirm you heard it. I stood in the middle of that station with my hand halfway to the doorknob, and I fought myself. I have never fought anything harder. Because part of me knew it wasn't her, knew she was gone, knew this was the thing wearing her the way it had worn. My own voice a minute before. But part of me, the wounded part, the part I'd come up this mountain to heal, didn't care whether it was real. It only heard someone cold and lost and calling my name. And it wanted, more than I have ever wanted anything, to finally be the one who arrived. I bit down on the inside of my cheek until I tasted iron. I put both hands flat against the wall, away from the door. And I stood there, shaking, silent, while the voice of the person I'd failed begged me through the dark to fail her again. I did not answer. It called for a long time, and then, sometime before dawn, it stopped. I couldn't do it alone anymore. The next morning, on my hours off, I went looking for someone who could tell me the truth. Dale wouldn't. That was clear. But in the permit binder, I'd found a name, a retired district ranger listed as an emergency contact, with a mailing address for a place down the mountain. Wren. No first name given, just Wren. I drove down the switchbacks with the sunlight cutting through the hemlocks, and the memory of that voice still crawling under my skin. Wren's place was a small cabin at the end of a dirt lane, wood smoke rising from the chimney, even in warm weather. She answered the door before I knocked, an old woman, small and sharp-eyed, weathered like the mountains themselves. Part of one ear was missing, an old scar healed white. and I made myself not look at it. "You're the new one at Ashcomb," she said. Not a question. "I need to ask you about Trail 14. Her eyes went hard. "No, you don't. Nobody needs to ask about it. That's the whole point." She started to close the door. "It called my name," I said, in a voice I knew. Someone I lost. It knew her. She stopped. The door stayed half open. She looked at me for a long moment, taking my measure. "You still have the card?" she asked. I took it out and held it up. "Recite the last rule. Do not ask your supervisor why Trail 14 is closed," I said. "He will answer." Something in her face eased, just slightly. "Good," she said. "You haven't asked him yet. That's the only reason you're still worth talking to." She stepped back and held the door. "Come in then. But understand something before you cross this threshold. You came here for answers. Answers are the thing that gets rangers killed on that mountain. I'll tell you what keeps you alive. I won't give you more than that." I went in. Wren's cabin smelled of wood smoke and old paper and something herbal. She sat me at a small table and poured coffee I didn't touch. And then she told me the shape of the thing, though never the whole of it. "You think those rules are there to protect the hikers," she said. "Keep folks off a dangerous trail at night. That's what everybody thinks the first week. That's what the card is designed to let you think." She wrapped her hands around her own cup. "The rules aren't for the hikers. The rules are for you. And they're not safety rules. They're terms." "Terms of what?" "Of an agreement." She looked at me steadily. "There's something that lives up that drainage. It was there before the trail, before the park, before any of us. It doesn't leave as long as the terms are kept. And the terms are simple. The gate closes at the right time. Nobody answers it. Nobody looks at it. The register stays put. The lantern gets lit on schedule. And the ranger, whoever the ranger is that season, is the one who keeps the terms." The coffee steamed between us. Outside, a bird called, and the ordinary daylight sound of it felt obscene next to what she was saying. "Trail 14 isn't closed to keep people out," she said. "Anybody can walk in during the day. It's closed at night to keep the thing in. The gate, the chain, the lantern, all of it. You're not a guard standing watch over an empty trail. You're the one holding the door shut from the outside while it leans on it from the inside. And if the terms get broken," Wren's jaw tightened, "then it stops being kept in. And whoever broke the terms stops being the one who keeps them." She touched the scar where her ear used to be, without seeming to notice she was doing it. "I broke a small one once, a very small one. I was lucky. Luck like mine doesn't come twice." She leaned forward. "Watch your register. That's your early warning. When the count starts to move, the terms are already fraying, and it always moves before the worst night comes." After Wren, I counted the register, like my life depended on it, because I'd started to believe it did. 41. Every night. I'd walk out before the light turned, chain the gate, open the dented box, and count the swollen, wet pages by flashlight, twice, sometimes 3 times, until the number sat solid in my head. 41. It became a small prayer. As long as it stayed 41, the terms were holding, and I was just a man doing a strange job on a beautiful mountain. Then one morning, it was 40. I'd gone out at first light to unlock the gate, the way I did every dawn, and I opened the box out of habit and counted, and the number came up wrong. I counted again, slower, my finger touching each name. 40. I counted a third time with my heart going hard against my ribs. 40. The signature was gone, not crossed out, not torn away. I found the place where it had been, 3/4 down a page I knew, between two names I recognized, and there was a gap, a clean, blank space in the swollen paper where a name had been written, and now simply wasn't, as though the ink had never touched the page at all. The paper wasn't scraped or bleached. It was just empty, in the exact shape of an absence. Rule 3. If the count goes down, do not investigate. Note it and continue. I stood at that gate in the gray dawn and understood what the rule was really telling me. A name in a register means a person walked in. A name gone from a register, a name unwritten, meant a person had been walked out of existence. Somewhere, someone who had signed that book had been taken and then unmade, scrubbed backward out of the record like they had never come at all. And the rule forbade me from looking for them. Everything I was, everything I'd become a ranger to be, wanted to go up that trail and find out who was missing. Rule 3 said, note it and continue. I wrote the number in the log, 40. My hand barely obeyed me, and then I did the hardest thing the mountain had asked of me yet. I walked back to the station and continued, but I had to know how deep it went. That afternoon, I searched the station properly, opening every drawer, and in a locked one under the radio bench, with a key I found taped beneath the desk, I found a binder. It was thick, its cover soft and dark with handling, and someone had written on the spine, in faded marker, Trail 14, Incidents. Old paper smell rose off it when I opened it, dust and mildew and decades. It went back further than I wanted to know, report after report, in different hands, different inks, different decades of park letterhead, and they all told versions of the same night. A ranger who opened the gate after dark, a ranger who answered a voice, a ranger who looked at what the lantern showed. Each entry written by whoever came after, describing what was found, or more often what wasn't. Empty stations, chains left hanging open, register counts that had dropped by 1 or 2, or in one terrible year, by 5. I read them for hours, the light failing outside, until I reached one entry that stopped my breath. It was dated years back, and the handwriting was one I'd started to know from the district paperwork, Dale's. It described the loss of a colleague, another ranger, in flat official language. The man had been slow at the gate one evening, it said, had answered when he shouldn't have. Dale had found the station empty the next morning, the chain open, the count down by 1. The report was ordinary bureaucratic prose right up until the last line, which Dale had written by hand beneath his signature, smaller, as if he hadn't meant to, and couldn't stop himself. He asked why. I answered. I sat there in a dark station, with a binder open on my knees, and read those 4 words over and over. Dale had answered someone's question once, and that someone was gone. Outside, the light through the windows had turned orange, and from the direction of the gate, faint on the still air, I heard the gravel shift under a slow and patient weight. That night, a man came to the gate. I'd chained it in good time, well before the light turned, and I was walking my last circuit past the spur when I saw him. He was standing on the inside of the gate, on Trail 14, in the dark, with his headlamp off, just standing there, calm, waiting, as though he'd known I would come. "Evening?" he said. He looked completely ordinary. A hiker, mid-40s maybe, decent gear, a day pack, a wedding ring catching my flashlight beam. His voice was warm and a little tired. The voice of a reasonable person at the end of a long day. "I know the trail's closed," he said, holding up a hand before I could speak. "I'm sorry. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I left my pack up the trail this afternoon. My phone's in it, my keys, everything. I just need to slip through for 5 minutes and grab it, and I'll be gone. You can even walk up with me. Rule 4. One hiker may approach the gate after dark, asking to be let through because they left something on the trail. They are always polite. Do not open the gate for any reason. Real people do not come back at night." He was polite. He was specific. He had a story that made sense, the kind of small, ordinary crisis I'd helped a dozen real hikers with in daylight. Every part of him was designed to be helped. And that was the problem. He was too well designed. Because I'd read the rule, and here he was, exactly as the rule described, calm and apologetic and reasonable at a gate no living person should be standing behind after dark. "I can't open it," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Come back at sunrise. I'll help you find your pack then." He didn't get angry. That was the worst part. A real person would have gotten at least a little frustrated. He just tilted his head slightly and smiled, patient as the breathing I'd heard on my 4th night. And he said something that took the ground out from under me. "Dale let me through once," he said. I went still. The creek ran on somewhere behind me. My flashlight beam trembled on his face, and he didn't blink against it. "Dale," he said again, gently, as if we were old friends. And before Dale, there was Wren. She lit the lantern very carefully, Wren. She's careful. You met her, didn't you? Drove down the mountain. She told you about the terms." He smiled wider. She always did talk too much. My mouth had gone dry. There was no way for a stranger on a closed trail to know those names. That I'd driven to Wren's? What she'd told me? No way. Unless the thing wearing this man's shape had been listening to my whole season. Had read me the way it had read my dead caller's voice out of me. "You're not a hiker," I said. "No," he agreed easily. "Not anymore." He stepped closer to the gate, close enough that I could see the chain between us was already going white with frost, though the night was mild. But I was. I stood where you're standing. Once, ranger like you, season like yours. And one night, I was 3 minutes late, and I fixed it anyway. And then I got curious. His eyes stayed warm and terrible. I asked why, and now I work the gate, from this side. I understood then how many of them there were. Every ranger in that binder who'd broken a term. Every name unwritten from the register. They didn't just vanish. They were kept on the far side and put to work, standing at the gate in borrowed politeness, trying to talk the next ranger into opening it. I backed away from the gate. He didn't follow. He couldn't. not while the chain held. "Seventh night's comin'," he called after me kindly. "You'll want to light the lantern, and you'll want to look. Everybody wants to look." The seventh night since my first came, the way winter comes. Slow, and then, all at once. I'd been counting toward it, without wanting to. Rule 5. Every seventh night, leave the small gate lantern lit and facing the trail. Do not look directly at what it illuminates. Turn it off at first light. The lantern hung on its hook on the gatepost, an old brass thing with a smoke-blackened glass chimney, and I'd cleaned and filled it that afternoon with hands that wouldn't quite stay steady. I went out before the light turned. I chained the gate. I counted the register. 40. Still 40 since the night it dropped. And I didn't know whether steadiness was mercy or just the pause before it took another. Then I lit the lantern. The match trembled. The wick caught, and a small warm circle of light bloomed against the mouth of Trail 14, throwing the first 40 feet of trail into flickering gold and the trees into shifting shadow. I turned the lantern so it faced up the drainage, the way the rule said, and I hooked it in place. And at the edge of that light, just past where the gold faded into black, things gathered. I saw them the way you see things at the edge of vision, when looking directly makes them slide away. Shapes. Standing shapes, more than one, more than several, arranged just beyond the reach of the flame, where the light couldn't quite decide whether they were there. Patient. Facing the gate. Facing the light. Facing me. Do not look directly at what it illuminates. I kept my eyes down on the lantern's brass base, on the frost creeping along the chain, on my own boots in the gravel. Every instinct in a human body wants to look at what's watching it. I'd learned by then that my instincts were exactly the thing the mountain used, so I starved them. I looked at the ground, and that was when a headlamp appeared on the access road behind me, bright and bobbing, coming up out of the dark, and a voice called my name in a tone of ordinary friendly relief. "Hey, there you are." The headlamp swung toward me, and behind it, I could make out the shape of a man in ranger green, walking up the road with the easy stride of someone who belonged. "You're off early tonight. They sent me up to relieve you. Long drive. Go on home. Get some sleep. I've got the gate." Rule 6. If a second ranger arrives to relieve you before your shift ends, do not let them in, and do not leave with them. Confirm relief only by scheduled radio, never in person. Everything in me wanted to believe him. You have no idea how much. A whole season alone, a lantern throwing light on shapes that shouldn't exist, a frost-white chain, and a dead woman's voice, and a polite man on the wrong side of the gate. And here was another human being, in the right uniform, offering to take it off my shoulders and send me home to sleep. The loneliness of that mountain is a weight you stop feeling only when someone offers to lift it. And then you understand how heavy it was all along. "Radio hasn't cleared any relief," I said. "Radio's spotty up here. You know that." He kept walking, closer, his headlamp bright enough now that I couldn't see his face behind it. "Come on, you've earned it. Let's swap out." I made myself step back and key my own radio instead. "Ashcomb to district, confirming relief on site. Confirm you sent a second ranger to Ashcomb tonight." Static. Long static. Then Dale's voice. and I have never heard a man sound more afraid while trying to sound calm. Negative. No relief sent. Nobody's up there but you. A pause. Whatever's on that road, do not go to it. Do not let it in. You hear me? Get inside. The man on the road stopped walking. And then, slowly, he smiled behind the light and kept coming. They came at me all at once. Then, the whole mountain, leaning on every rule I had. The false relief kept walking up the road, closer. And as he came, he called my name, warm and coaxing. And it was Rule 2, pressing on me, the voice that must not be answered. Behind me, the lantern burned, and the shapes crowded its edge, and I felt them wanting me to turn and look. Rule 5, leaning on my spine. And in front of me, the man in the ranger uniform held out his hand and asked me to walk out with him, down the road, away from the gate. And that was Rule 6, the relief that must be refused. 3 rules. All at once, every one of them designed to break a different part of a person, and all of them aimed at me in the same held breath of a night. I did the only thing the card had ever really taught me. I obeyed all 3. I did not answer the voice calling my name. I clamped my jaw and stayed silent while it said my name over and over, gentler and gentler, the way you'd coax a frightened animal. I did not look at the lantern light, though I could feel the shapes at its edge straining toward my turned back, though every nerve I had begged me to face them. And I did not go to the man on the road. I backed away from him, toward the station, keeping the gate in the corner of my eye and the road in the other. And when he reached the edge of the lantern's glow, he stopped, unable or unwilling to cross into it, and stood there, smiling with a face I still couldn't see. I got to the station. I bolted the door. I sat with my back against it and my knees drawn up, and I let the lantern burn out there in the dark, all night, the way the rule commanded. Do not turn it off until first light. At dawn, I opened the door. The road was empty. The lantern had gone out on its own with the coming light. The gate was still chained, and I was still, somehow, the ranger who kept the terms. But I knew now that keeping them wasn't enough. I needed to understand them. And there was only one person who could tell me why. I drove down to find Dale that same morning, before I could talk myself out of it, with the sunrise still red behind the ridges. I told myself I only wanted to understand. I told myself that a man who understood the thing could keep the terms better, could survive the season, could maybe even find a way to leave. I told myself a lot of things on that drive, and every one of them was the mountain talking, though I didn't know it yet. Dale was at the district office. He took one look at my face and set down his coffee, and I saw him understand what I'd come to do before I said a word. Don't, he said quietly. Whatever it is, don't ask it. Rule 7. Do not ask your supervisor why Trail 14 is closed. He will answer. I need to know why, I said. Why it's closed. Why any of it. What it is. I've kept every rule, Dale. I've earned an answer. His shoulders dropped. Not in anger. In grief. He looked like a man watching something he'd already watched too many times, unable to stop it again. That's the thing, he said. You have earned it. That's exactly the problem. You've kept the terms so well, so completely that now the answering will take. On someone who broke the rules and answers just words. On someone who's kept every one of them, an answer is a key. He rubbed his face with both hands. I can't lie to you. That's the last term. If you ask, I answer. I've never once been able to hold it back. God knows I've tried. Then tell me, I said. And he told me. He told me what lives up the drainage, and what it is, and what the gate really holds, and how the register keeps its count, and why the lantern must be lit, and why the names come back wearing borrowed voices. He told me all of it, calmly, completely. And I won't repeat it here, because I've come to understand that the telling is the thing that spreads. And as he spoke, I felt it. Something settling over me, slow and total, like the sensation of a name being written down somewhere I couldn't see. When Dale finished, he sat back, and he looked older than he had an hour before, and emptier, as though the telling had taken something out of him and put it into me. Now you know, he said, and knowing is the door. I didn't understand yet. I asked him what he meant. The thing keeps the ranger who keeps the terms, he said. That's the arrangement. But it can only keep one who understands what he's keeping. The ones who break the rules early, who answer a voice or look at the light out of ignorance. It takes them fast and unmakes them, wipes their name from the book. Fuel. But the one who keeps every term, who learns the whole shape of it, and then asks the last question and receives the answer, that one it doesn't unmake. He met my eyes. That one it relieves. It sends a second ranger up the road, in green, in the dark, to take his place. And he walks out with it, willingly, because by then he understands. And understanding is a kind of consent. The false relief on the road, the man who'd offered to send me home to sleep. That's how the last three left, Dale said, and his voice broke on it. And I understood that he was quoting the card back to me. The exact words of Rule 7, he will answer. That is how the last three left. They kept every term. They earned their answer. They asked. And then one night, a ranger they trusted came up the road to relieve them. And they went. And you? I said. You answered someone once? It says so in the binder. He asked why, and you answered. Dale looked at me with something close to love and entirely like despair. Yes, he said. I answered him. And I've spent every year since finding the next ranger who nobody would miss, and handing him a laminated card and telling him not to ask why. He swallowed. I'm not a good man. I'm just a man who was relieved of one job and given a worse one, same as you're about to be. I never left the mountain. I want you to understand that I could have run. After Dale told me, I could have gotten in my truck and driven and never come back. And part of me screamed to do exactly that. But I'd understood by then the thing Dale had tried to warn me about with Rule 6. Leaving is what relief means. The road down the mountain and the false ranger coming up it in the dark are the same road. To be sent home, to be relieved, to walk out with the thing wearing a friendly face, that is the taking. There is no leaving Ashcomb that isn't the leaving. So I stayed. I chose the version of it where I stay. I still lock the trail, 14 gate every night by the orange light, not the clock. I still count the register, and it holds at 40. and I've stopped praying over the number because I know now what the number is. I still don't answer when the dark calls my name in voices it has learned from me. And it has learned so many now. Not just the caller I failed, but everyone I've ever lost. A whole choir of them out past the bend. I light the lantern every 7th night, and I keep my eyes on my boots while the shapes crowd its edge. I'm telling you this on my scheduled radio window, the one time a night the district can hear me, talking low, so the mic barely catches it, because the radio is the only voice I'm allowed to send off this mountain. I don't know if anyone downstream is even listening. I kept the terms. I keep them still. And I know exactly what that means about what comes for me. So here's the only thing I have left to give you. And it's the same gift Dale gave me, and I threw away. If you ever take a job like mine, a remote posting, a station nobody else wanted, a beautiful mountain that felt like it was waiting for you, and someone hands you a laminated card with strange specific rules on it, do not laugh. Read it twice. Read it every week. Follow every rule, even the ones that make no sense. Especially the ones that make no sense. Lock the gate before the light turns. Never answer your name. Count the names, and don't go looking for the ones that vanish. Don't open the gate for the polite one. Light the lantern and don't look. Don't leave with the relief that comes early. And when your supervisor tells you not to ask why the trail is closed at night, believe him, because he will answer. He won't be able to help himself. And the answer is the door. I asked. I know that means my season here is ending, one way or another. Some night soon, a headlamp is going to come bobbing up the access road, and a man in Ranger Green is going to call my name in a warm and friendly voice and tell me I've earned my rest, and I'm afraid I'll understand him well enough by then to go. Somewhere down that mountain right now, there's a new hire reading a job listing for the loneliest posting available, thinking they've finally found somewhere to heal. One day, they'll come up here to relieve me. I hope, for their sake, they don't ask why. And somewhere out past the gate, in the dark, patient as it has always been, something is turning over a soft, wet page and lifting a pen and getting ready to write another name. Then the chain closes, once